Star Citizen 1.0 will be the biggest update of all time and will be the beginning of the future of this highly anticipated game. And if CIG can deliver this massive promise that they've been building up to for 12 years, it could mark a major milestone being hit and finally bring new players to the game with its soft release and having many more features with better polish and optimization than ever before. Now, I've done a ton of research on all of the features that the game would need to have in order to be considered a successful soft launch. But what could they be? And how will they affect the growth of Star Citizen and bring us into a new age of gaming? In today's video, we'll discuss what features would be needed for 1.0 to consider it a soft release. Now, this is all speculation on what features might be in 1.0 and what should make it in, so take my speculations with a grain of salt. If you're excited for 1.0 to add a ton of features to the game in a more polished state, then smash that like button and be sure to share your thoughts in the comments below. Your engagement with the channel helps us gauge your interest in all things Star Citizen. And don't forget to subscribe for more clear, concise, and up-to-date content on Star Citizen and Sim Gear reviews. Star Citizen 1.0 is the culmination of all of CIG's hard work to get more features, updates, and a backlog of ships into the game that would be in a more polished state where fewer bugs exist and players consistently have a positive experience when playing. Player progress would no longer be temporary and wipes would no longer happen. This would allow players to set goals to attain during their gameplay sessions, earn mission rewards, and have an overall experience with very few issues. This positive experience would translate to the game being more marketable to more potential players by using more traditional advertising in the form of gameplay and cinematic trailers. This would enable the development to continue to expand and focus on adding unique gameplay loops, new features, creating new star systems, landing locations, and missions. This could also bring players that may have backed years ago that have been just waiting patiently on the sidelines for Star Citizen to be out of its alpha phase and in a more stable and playable state where their reputation with mission givers and vendors persist and they don't have to grind all over again since there will be no more server wipes. This release would prove to the Star Citizen gaming community and even the gaming community that have heard about it and had their doubts due to CIG's less than palatable decisions with funding and marketing, constant setbacks of patches and features, and the gratuitous numbers of bugs, server issues, and lack of optimization during the game's alpha state. It would prove their ability to deliver their vision and showcase what the game could be even 10 years from now. But what are all of the features that CIG would need to consider it a successful release? First, we need to discuss why 3.23, 3.23.x, and 4.0 are extremely important for the devs to deliver on and go above and beyond expectations by providing each of the new upcoming patches with more polish, bug fixing, and optimization so players can have a smoother and positive experience. This must be focused on more because of what's at stake regarding 1.0 being released. 3.23 delivers tons of quality of life updates that are integral to the future of the game, and is the first piece of the puzzle to integrating a large portion of Squadron 42's features that are needed to make navigating the game better. Coming shortly after, 3.23.x will add in freight elevators, persistent and instance hangars, the beginning of modularity, and item banks, which will be extremely important for 3.23 as a whole to be considered a successful patch. Following that, 4.0 will be the next part of the puzzle that will expand how much more of the game players can explore by adding Pyro, its planets, moons, stations, landing zones, and more. And with static server meshing being a massive pillar that will begin to propel the game to new heights by increasing the player cap drastically, maybe even somewhere north of 1,000 players in a single shard, and will increase server performance so that AI functions better than it ever has before. So with this year already promising to be a massive one, and adding so many needed features and updates, it is clear that CIG needs to begin focusing on what is closer on the horizon than it ever has been, with development nearing the next phase, leaving the alpha stage. With a recent letter from the chairman talking about the vision of Star Citizen 1.0, which in Chris Roberts' words, will be representative of a commercial release, we got an insight into what their plans could be for the future. I expect that there will be more information during CitizenCon in Manchester this year that will show off new features, locations, ships, and more. And as soon as we get the roadmap update for 1.0, we'll cover all of its details in a future video. So with everything that the devs have discussed that they want to deliver to this game, what will need to be included in 1.0 for it to be considered a successful soft launch, for lack of a better term? What should the game look like? And what features should it drop with? While none of us can accurately predict what they may launch with, many of us have ideas. But here are my ideas of what it should include. While this list is a pretty long one, I feel that all of these features are equally important enough to get into the 1.0 launch that will allow them to continue to add as the years go on. Now first off, 1.0 will need to have a minimum of 5 star systems. Stand-in and Pyro are obviously 2 of the 5 that would be included, but there's also potential for them to add other systems like Nyx, Magnus, Odin, Ellis, and Terra. Ideally, I'd really like to see 10 star systems for 1.0, but 5 would be absolutely a necessity. If you want to check out my predictions for what other 3 systems I think will be in and why, check out this video I did a few months ago that goes into all of the details of why they would release these 3 systems. Moving on, we will need to have a more narrative storyline in the verse and missions giving unique rewards and a more robust reputation system. This more narrative storyline would obviously bring back all of the mission givers the game used to have, add in new mission givers, and have tons of unique rewards for story missions and reputation rewards. We will also need fully reworked player beacons that are tied into the reputation system and have their own contract missions that players can create to fill various roles by hiring other players for escort, cargo hauling, salvaging, mining, repairs and towing, search and rescue for medical beacons, engineering, and general crew roles aboard multi-crew ships. This would allow each player to grade how well another player does during the beacon's contract and would further enhance the interactions between players. The quanta simulation and dynamic economy will also be needed so that supply and demand plays a role in the pricing of weapons, components, armors, commodities, and crafting materials that would largely affect in-game NPCs and even players. This would also include higher operational costs for ships, more options for ship insurance, where a player can choose a lower cost hull insurance, insurance to cover the ship and stock components, or a customized insurance option where the player can select which components they want to cover, including upgraded components. We'd also need a fully working player trading and player market system that allows players to take their Banu merchantmen or go to a station and set up a player-owned shop to sell goods and services to other players, including having that same system integrate into the mobiGlas so players in any location can see where things are being sold so that they can go to that location and pick them up or have them delivered to them for a fee via either a player or NPC. Building interiors would be essential for creating whole communities inside the game that add in rooftop access for players to access landing pads, maintenance for performing repairs and accessing power, residential for adding player-owned habs and apartments, commercial area for adding shops, restaurants, and offices, and lobbies for providing additional access points, shops, communal areas, and reception. Now, Maelstrom would absolutely be needed in order to add in more physically based destruction that will bring in more damageable buildings, give ships enhanced destruction, and finally give ships armor, which will enhance combat not only for fighters, but all the way up to capital ships. Raytrace global illumination for enhancing lighting and shadows that will further push the fidelity and believability of the game. Hazards in space like electrical storms, solar flares, pulsars, radiation, and more would be needed in order to create a more engaging environment. And dynamic weather on planets including snowstorms, lightning storms, heavy rain, hurricanes, acid rain, and whatever else they can dream up. All new exploration gameplay with in-depth scanning where players can scan and investigate celestial anomalies, find artifacts, chart new and never before discovered jump points, discover new and unique points of interest in space or on planets, perform long-range scanning, scan surface locations from orbit, check atmospheric composition of planets, and see if they have a breathable atmosphere or life signs, and a system that allows us to sell all the data on a player market. Subcomponents are also needed for more in-depth repairing of ship components where we can remove specific pieces to repair the components back to full health or enhance their efficiency or power. This would tie into what we ultimately need as well, which they have been promising for years, and that's CPU and component tuning to further flesh out the engineering gameplay. Flyable capital ships, complete with hacking gameplay for breaking into ships via a remote panel, using an explosive charge, or even by using a manual release lever and opening by force. This would also include a proper working docking system so ships can dock to one another. Dynamic events that aren't controlled by CIG for marketing purposes and are instead triggered by background actions on a server, either by players doing repeatable, prerequisite missions or simply time-based. Master modes would need to be completely finished to a point where the game would be indicative of the final product with very little balancing being required. Modularity and room swapping for more ships will allow players to change out rooms and modules of their ship to fundamentally change how their ship handles specific roles. The ability for players to transport VIPs and NPCs around the verse using ships like the Spirit E1 or Genesis Starliner would also tie into the player contract system and allow players to transport other players throughout any star system. Full Organization 2.0 integration in the game where orgs can set taxes for members, roles, accessing org ships, org item banks, bases, and more. I would argue that this was needed long before, but I can understand waiting until we at least have dynamic server meshing to get this in-game. The ability to eject an atmosphere with parachutes, and escape pods that can be utilized and allow you the ability to somewhat control where you land. New audio simulation, and more immersion in the cockpit by adding in relaxed state, interaction prompts, and being able to fully interact with items on board ships. Raids inside distribution centers that require groups of players and have their own unique set of powerful rewards that are specific to each location. Dynamic server meshing for further increasing player capacity, adding server support for larger capital ships so to allow for more players to crew ships, increasing server and AI performance, and further enhancing the overall stability. A unique and engaging system for crafting where blueprints allow players to craft armor, weapons, components, interactive props, and even ships that allow players to further enhance the quality of the items to make them higher tiers by using more rare and unique materials. And base building so that players and orgs can create massive locations on planets that can either serve as a centralized base or a temporary location for crafting items, mining minerals, or collecting materials for various uses like medical, farming, and tons more. Now there are probably a ton of other features in gameplay that I haven't included or possibly may have forgotten. Still, I believe this list represents a Star Citizen that I would play for a long time, with the potential for the game to continue to be added to over the next 10 years, with CIG adding even more features, engaging gameplay loops and mechanics, new and unique ships, weapons and gear, tons of new star systems, landing zones, and many different locations. Star Citizen 1.0 has the potential to be the release of the century once it's finally in our hands, and I honestly think that we're still a few years away from that day. But I'm very interested in what they will reveal to us for 1.0 with the major roadmap update and what they show us at CitizenCon. I believe that Chris Roberts and Richard Tyrer are working hard to deliver on the vision that is Star Citizen, and I'm very much looking forward to what the next 10 years have in store for us. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit that like button and let me know in the comments what features you need to have added in 1.0 to consider it a successful release, as I would love to hear your thoughts. Don't forget to join our community by subscribing to the channel, where you'll be provided clear and concise news and updates on Star Citizen and reviews of some of the best gear and peripherals in the sim and gaming market. If you want to join the channel and support the creation of these videos, then consider becoming a member and get special perks such as loyalty badges, priority replies, and more. And if you want more information on all of the features that I believe will come to Alpha 4.0, then you'll want to check out this video. Fly safe, pilots, and I will see you in the next video. Havoc out.